There we go. Sorry, guys, we're having some technical difficulties. Welcome to the Take Human Action podcast. This is going to be a solo episode. I am Regina Badger with Issue Coalitions of the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania. Today, we are doing a recap of the counter protest that we did today in Harrisburg. We went down there, Ceasefire PA and March for Our Lives did essentially demanding stricter gun laws. So we went down there to counter protest, and these are just kind of some of my takeaways from today. So I will give credit where credit is due. They did have a decent turnout. They had, I want to say, about 100 people, and that they bust in, as Democrats typically do. But they had about 100 people out there. There were only 6 of us, but it brings light to an important issue. I shouldn't say issue, but a tactic that they use that I don't think people realize is one, actually a decent tactic. But so I want to make note that this protest was on a Thursday. From their entire event was from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. with the rally outside of the Capitol from 12 to 1. So for most normal people, this is a work week. This is a work day. We don't all have the luxury to take off and be there. Or, if this would have been a weekend event, we would have had a lot of people there. And I know that the scrutiny that we're getting right now, that unfortunately there wasn't many of us down there today. But I noticed with the rally that it did consist of mostly students. I shouldn't say students, but younger kids and essentially older boomers. So again, it's just a shame that we see this tactic a lot where they're doing these midday, midweek events that a lot of their opposition can't attend. So that was the only kind of downside for us, is that, I'm sure a lot of people would have loved to be there, but it kind of brings up that there's this constant, I want to say, criticism because we had this criticism with the Rage Against the War rally, where, right now, it's like a gathering. And I think it's that whether it's someone on Twitter, making fun of the 5 clowns that showed up, or it's Rachel Maddow trying to say it's a weird little rally, it's still the fact that people are showing up for the message. And I think that's the important part, is we still showed up. Maybe the next one, there'll be 10 people. Maybe the one after that, there'll be 50 people, and then so on and so forth. I think it's still important. Even if I would have been the only one there, I still would have showed up, and I still would have had the great conversations, which I'll get into later, with the people on the opposite side. So I don't think attendance should be the biggest criticism. I think it should be the fact that people still showed up to defend the message. And our message today was to promote responsible gun ownership and to prevent any sort of authoritarian government overreach. So more about the rally. So they did have some speakers. They had some testimonials. It was pretty heartbreaking to hear some of these stories of people who lost loved ones, children, family, friends to gun violence or to suicide. And there's this misconception, I feel like, that whether it's libertarians or anyone who is pro Second Amendment rights, that we are almost happy about this, that we're, a dig that the left tries to use a lot is, the blood of these children is on your hands. And it's this weird misconception, and it's this, I wish people would stop thinking about us like this. It's just simply that I feel I have the right to defend myself. It's funny to me that the same people who, pushed for lockdowns, pushed for vaccine mandates, they screamed defund the police for 2 years, are the ones who are saying that we shouldn't have any guns. So my question is then, so who comes to your aid when someone's breaking into your house? Who comes to your aid when someone, accosts you when you're getting into your car? I'll use myself as an example. I am barely 5 foot. I am not strong, and I live on my own. And I personally feel safer having a firearm. And the best case scenario for me is that I will never point my firearm at another human being. And I think that's another, like, I wish that people understood that more, rather than having this misconception about, responsible gun owners. Is the best case scenario is that I never point my gun at somebody, and I never want to have to use it. But that doesn't negate the fact that I still want to be a responsible gun owner. Like, I still want to make sure my gun is properly locked up when it's not in use. I want to make sure that my gun is clean and it's functioning properly, that I know how to safely use it. It's just, there's a lot of misconceptions that I learned today. I learned that we had some people come up and talk to us, and I want to save that for a little bit later. But real quick, let me just take a look at the comments here. Yeah, the difference is we have jobs and they don't. Yeah, I mean, again, it's a shame that it happened when it did. But this just kind of motivated me that maybe we need some sort of event, or maybe we need our own kind of, advocating for responsible gun ownership. So maybe it's good that they keep using this tactic, because it just motivates us to do our own and make sure that it's, on a weekend. So let me just see what else here. So obviously we were kind of given some looks, and we did have some people. Autumn Pangea, our wonderful Autumn Pangea, actually got interviewed by CBS 21. And what's really funny is, while she was being interviewed, I want to make this point too. We did not disturb their protest, their rally. We made sure to stay far back on the steps. Like, we did not try to interject ourselves. We did not try to get into camera angle with our signs. We, had a bullhorn, but we didn't use it. We weren't yelling things. We were talking amongst ourselves, and there were a couple things that were a little outrageous that, maybe we had a comment or two, but we kept it respectful, and we kept it very peaceful. And I find it funny that the ceasefire PA and March for Our Lives people cannot give us that same respect. There was one woman who was so offended that the news was even interviewing us that she tried to interject herself during Autumn's interview. She was like yelling and trying to make a scene. And luckily, actually one of, I think, ceasefire PA or March for Our Lives, one of their members actually kind of was like, come on over here, Karen, like you're embarrassing us. So that was actually pretty funny. But we did have some people approach us. Autumn had a wonderful interaction with someone who was just asking about like what we were there for, who we were with. Me personally, there was a couple that came up to me, Eric Gerhardt, and our friend Greg, and they had the same questions. They were like, like what is it about these bills that you're so concerned about? How does this affect your Second Amendment rights? And we let them get their concerns out. We let them ask their questions. And what I explained is that these bills and these, like red flag laws, which we talked about too, it's not, I feel like when people ask us why this is such a problem, it gives away immediately that they have not studied history or they are refusing to acknowledge history. Because in what I have learned, it's not like the cops just immediately knock on your door and take your guns. And that really can't happen. And you know why that can't happen? Because we have guns. And it's goalposting. So it starts with these small things like the red flag laws. So then it starts with stricter gun control, and then even stricter gun control. And then the next thing you know, we are in totalitarianism territory, or we're in authoritarian government overreach. You know who really loved the idea of gun control? Hitler. You know who really loved the idea of gun control? Stalin. You know who really loved the idea of gun control? Mao. All of these dictators got to the horrible point of genocide by disarming their citizens. And if that's not enough reason for you to understand why I should have the right to defend myself, my family, and my property, then I'm going to have a really hard time taking your argument seriously. So it was funny enough that during this conversation, they kind of revealed that, one, they didn't read the bills. They didn't read what was in the bills. And they didn't really understand how red flag laws can be abused. Eric had a great example for them about how red flag laws can be abused, where you have a domestic violence situation and, the woman's trying to get away, and the, husband goes, the husband goes and says, oh, you know what? She's not acting like herself. I think she's crazy. And, I think she needs to have her guns taken away from her. And then that woman can't defend herself in an abusive situation. And the next thing you know, her gun is taken away. And now that opens up for a whole different tragedy. And I think sometimes this was a great reminder for me too. I think sometimes we assume that everybody who's there for that type of rally or who's chanting that message, I think as libertarians, we tend to almost have this knee-jerk reaction that they're all kind of have that sinister undertone of like a communist socialist mindset, where like they know what they're doing. And I think a lot of these people are just expressing this concern from an emotional reaction, or I would say an emotional reaction, or they're just not educated. You know, I'll use myself as an example. Previous to joining the party, I was very anti-gun. Now, I had a situation where I had an abusive ex-boyfriend who, when I tried to leave, held a gun to my head and then turned the gun on himself in an attempt to keep me there. That would have been a wonderful time for me to been able to defend myself. Now, unfortunately, because of that incident, that made me very anti-gun. Again, not understanding how outside of my little bubble that, again, responsible gun ownership is necessary. So as the years went by and I started to get educated on like, oh, this is how you safely handle a gun. Like, hey, what if you're in this situation? So it's wild to me that some people can conveniently forget human nature. And I have another thing I want to touch on that. So anyway, so we're talking about red flag laws, and this gentleman stops. He's like, no, that's not how red flag laws work. We have to be a family member, and if I see that, you know, my wife or my cousin is acting, you know, out of key, I go and fill out a form and we go to a judge and the judge makes a determination. And I said to him, so you trust the judge and you trust everybody involved in that situation to 100% tell the truth. And that kind of stopped him. He goes, and I told him, I said, I envy you. I envy your trust in the judicial system because it's never failed. I envy your trust in human beings to always tell the truth, to always do the right thing. I'm envious of that. And I genuinely am. I'm genuinely envious of people who like these stricter gun reform, who assume that they are never going to be in a situation where they have to defend their life or their property. I'm pretty envious of that because I don't have that trust in the human race, and I don't have that trust in the police to show up on time. And again, you all screamed for 2 years, defund the police. So I don't know who you think is coming to help you when someone is breaking into your home and threatening the lives of your family. And it's always kind of funny to me that the people, again, who are crying out for this really strict gun control, they're either these like low test males who can't defend themselves, or they're these gelatinous women who probably get winded walking up their stairs carrying a laundry basket. So it's like, how are you defending yourself? But it's just wild how, again, and you want to talk about privilege, like that's a privilege in itself, that you think you'll never be in danger, that your neighbor will never be in danger. Like, they love to scream about privilege. That's a privilege. Again, I'm not even a minority. I'm just a small female who lives on her own, and I feel safer at night knowing that I'm carrying. But let me just see. So as far as news coverage for the event, before I get into that, but I did want to say that the people that did come up to us and talk to us, the woman who talked to Autumn and the couple that talked to the rest of our group, I do want to thank them for recognizing that we didn't disrupt. Like they said to us, thank you for not, yelling and disrupting the protest. Thank you for coming out here and being respectful. Thank you for talking to us. And I think that is, for me, as someone who's passionate about creating these coalitions, you know, even with the people who we're not going to see eye to eye on. Because I even said to them, the woman was carrying a sign that was calling for, I forget what her sign said exactly, but it was basically a sign promoting, safe gun, like locking your gun up properly, like gun safety. And I said, I agree with you. I want people to know how to handle their firearm properly. I want them to get it legally. You know, we don't support this idea of bad people doing bad things. Like, I'm not happy about the kid in Denver who hurt 2 teachers. I'm not happy about any of these school shootings. I'm not happy to hear that, you know, a man, you know, shot his wife and child and then turned the gun on himself. Like, these are tragedies. But the bigger issue is that we don't have a gun problem. We have a serious mental health problem in this country. And you can't talk to me about how that kid got or purchased his gun when most of these school shooters, these kids, are on a hefty cocktail of antidepressant medication, these SSRIs and SNRIs. Why are we not talking about the dangers of putting these, you know, juvenile kids on these cocktails rather than addressing the fact that we have the real systemic issue is that we have trauma in these communities, and these people are crying out over and over for relief, and we're not taking the other measures. You know, I mean, I've talked ad nauseum about, you know, I'm a big plant medicine advocate. Like, I don't really want to exclude that from this, because if you're going to push your, you know, lawmakers for stricter gun control, then you better be pushing them to take care of the problem of mental health in this country. You know, they love their statistics over the last couple of years about how suicide and, you know, gun violence has gone up. But let's not forget the fact that we locked people in their homes for 1.5 years, 2 years. We told people they couldn't go to work and support their families and take care of their own for 2 years. We kept the liquor stores open, but your mom and pop shops couldn't operate. You know, Amazon could still operate. Like, we have to talk about these bigger issues if we're going to focus on something like the gun control. So, you know, it's just a shame again how they kind of hyper focus on one thing, not realizing that some of the other issues that they are pushing for are essentially adding to the problem. As far as coverage, there was a couple news stations there. Like I said, Autumn got interviewed, which was awesome. You know, just again, you know, echoing our message about, you know, safe gun control, or I'm sorry, responsible gun ownership. But I thought there was something else. I know we had a couple questions / comments. Of course, I can't find it right now. But anyway, moving on. Let me see from our illustrious chair. Yeah, the implementation nonviolent possession charges for drugs and guns is how the authorities moved the Overton window away from constitutionally protected rights. Yeah, exactly. What was your biggest takeaways from the event? So for me, again, my biggest takeaway is that I hate to make this sound like we're trying to adopt leftist tactics, because that's the last thing I want to do. One of my biggest takeaways is I think we really need to take an initiative to educate people the way that they are trying to emotionally manipulate people. And again, I'm not taking away from the tragedy of these people who have suffered gun violence or had a family member affected by gun violence. It's more just we need to come to the table and have those conversations. Like, for example, it would have been very easy to say to that couple, and I think as, again, libertarians, we tend to again have a knee-jerk reaction because, again, a lot of us are educated and understand the concept of the right to life, liberty, property, but a lot of these people are not. We have to work on having a knee-jerk reaction and sounding aggressive when people genuinely say, like, what's your deal? Like, even if they say, like, why are you a gun nut? Explain to them, like, I'm not a gun nut. We need to educate people and hear them. Like, we're gonna get a lot further. We don't have to leave the table best friends, but I think we're going to get a lot further. And that's really what today showed me, by just simply letting people voice their concerns and just explaining to them, this is my stance. This is why. Here's how what you're implementing can be abused. And these measures can be abused. It's on a very wide scale. So, my call, just, trying to build these coalitions, is that don't be afraid to just kind of hold your tongue for a second and have a conversation with these people, because some of them just aren't educated, or some of them are coming from an emotional reactionary place. But, and my other big takeaway is just that, we really need to, we just had, MAJ TOURE, who's, the founder of Black Guns Matter, and he's doing a lot of great things down at the Solutionary Center down there in Philadelphia. We kind of need to take that initiative other places. We need to be offering, we need to be setting up some sort of class or some sort of, gathering, just where we're educating and we're not shutting people out. Like, we need to let people come to the table and have the conversation. Like, I know it's hard when, again, we're educated on these things. Like, we understand, like, how the domino effect with disarming citizens goes, but we still need to give people the chance, because I think there's a lot of people in that gray area who, once they're educated and they start thinking for themselves, like, even if they don't go and get, a Glock 19 tomorrow, they might at least go, well, you know what? I see their point, so I'm going to leave them alone. And as libertarians, that's really all we want, is just leave us alone. But, it's, again, I was glad that, again, we showed up. More than anything, I just hope people understand, if you have a message and if you have a belief, you absolutely need to stand for your rights, because it's when we stop showing up, it's when we stop voicing our concerns, it's when we stop having these constructive conversations, that's when it's really going to domino effect into a problem. So yeah. So guys, that's really all I have. I'm sorry, I'm flying kind of solo here. I am very tired. I've been on the road all day. I had to be around socialist communists, and that always drains my battery like kryptonite. But I certainly want to remind everybody that we have the Take Human Action Tour, featuring Dave Smith, MAJ TOURE, Scott Horton, and many more. We have the Eventbrite link that I will drop in the chat here, if it doesn't break everything. Okay. But yeah, everyone, I highly recommend coming out. I believe the next stop is going to be in New York at the Blockchain Center. Again, on Saturday, with our guest speakers. But yeah, thanks again, guys, for coming out or coming in, listening. Again, I'm sorry we're just running with a solo episode here. But again, and I thank you everybody who came out to the rally today. Again, I know this was weird with a Thursday in the middle of the day, but I really do appreciate everyone coming out and taking a stance. Thank you to Eric Gerhardt, our hopefully we have some sort of special election, our endorsed candidate for the Senate. I really appreciate him coming out, and he brought his puppy. So that always, that's the biggest takeaway is when we go to these events with these groups that we don't get along with, bring a dog, because Eric's dog was the star of the show. And so many people forgot for a second that we were these crazy gun nuts to come up and pet his dog. So 1000%, start bringing dogs to more of our events. But again, guys, thank you for popping in and listening to the recap. And don't forget to take human action.